Good morning, one and all. Today, my subject seminar is metabolic brain injury, and my moderator is Dr. Chetan. Coming to the introduction, most metabolic disorders cause brain injury through the actions of the accumulated toxic substances within the brain, after often termed as encephalopathy. So, encephalopathy is acute global cerebral dysfunction in the absence of a primary structural brain disease or a direct central nervous system infection. It encompasses a vast and heterogeneous group of disorders with non specific clinical presentation. Coming to the etiology of metabolic encephalopathy, it is different in adults and also in the pediatric population. Etiology of the metabolic encephalopathy in adult population includes causes like organ failure, like hepatic encephalopathy, renal failure, pulmonary failure, hypoxemia, hypercapnia, electrolyte abnormalities like hypernatremia, hyponatremia, hypercalcemia, hypocalcemia, hypermagnesemia, hypomagnesemia, hypophosphatemia, and glucose abnormalities, especially hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia, and also endocrine abnormalities, hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, hyperparathyroidism, hypoparathyroidism, adrenal insufficiency. The nutritional causes like acute thiamine deficiency, seen as Wernicke's encephalopathy, vitamin B12 deficiency, niacin deficiency, folate deficiency, Marachi-Fawa Binagami disease, acute feeding syndrome, where we can see hypophosphatemia, and infectious, that is sepsis associated encephalopathy. Toxins like sedatives, anticholinergics, salicylates, arsenic, lead, ethylene glycol, methanol, cyanide, carbon monoxide, and organophosphates are also involved in the causes of metabolic encephalopathy. The systemic causes can be hypertensive crisis, posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome, or hyperviscosity syndromes. We can also see metabolic encephalopathy in withdrawal states like alcohol or benzodiazepine withdrawal and opioid withdrawal. Coming, uh, Coming to the causes of metabolic encephalopathy in pediatric populations, it can be because of organic failure, as discussed previously, hepatic encephalopathy, renal failure, pulmonary failure or hypoxemia, electrolyte abnormalities, infections, toxins, and especially inborn errors of metabolism, which are the defects in gluconeogenesis, fatty acid oxidation disorders, amino acid disorders, organic acidemias, urea cycle disorders, carbohydrate disorders, mitochondrial disorders, paroxysmal disorders, lysosomal storage disorders, purine and pyramidal metabolic disorders, metal metabolism disorders, and porphyrias. So, these inborn errors of metabolism are generally encountered in the pediatric population, which we are not covering in this session. Coming to the pathophysiology, it mainly depends upon the cause. However, regardless of the etiology, the main mechanism is due to disruption of arousal and attention centers in the brain. Another mechanism including compression or injury of the areas critical for memory, attention, and executive functions. The abnormalities in neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine, serotonin, GABA, dopamine, tryptophan, cytokines also affect these connections. Pathophysiology. Cerebral edema is seen in case of fulminant hepatic encephalopathy or hypoosmolar encephalopathy. Drug induced causes disruption of the normal integration of the neurotransmitters leading to encephalopathy. Electrolyte derangements, they alter the membrane excitability leading to the encephalopathic features. Nutritional disorders, they disturb the cellular energy metabolism and cause neuronal death. Exogenous toxins and also carbon monoxide and cyanide, they impair the oxygen delivery and cause mitochondrial dysfunction. Also, disturbed blood-brain barrier leads to accumulation of systemic toxins which interferes with the neuronal functions. Coming to the clinical manifestations, it can be subtle or it can be full-blown delirium in an agitated or confusion state or somnolence. Impaired attention is the cardinal features of the encephalopathy. So other motor symptoms like tremors, myoclonus, asterixis can be seen. Generally, the pupillary reflexes and the other brainstem reflexes are spared. However, in severe cases, posturing may occur and brainstem reflexes may get impaired. So, how to assess the patient with a delirium or an encephalopathy? Step 1 is to assess for the functions fluctuations in the mental status. So, the mental status assessment includes arousal, whether the patient is spontaneously awake, with the eyes open and alert, whether the eyes are opening to voice, opens eyes to physical stimulus, or no eye opening. Coming to attentiveness, able to say the months backwards, able to count backward from 20 to 1, able to count from 1 to 10, but cannot do either of the above, able to follow the complex 2 to 3 step verbal commands, but cannot do the but cannot say the months backward from December to January, or cannot count backward from 20 to 1, or he might be able to follow only a simple verbal command, or able to follow only a simple mimicked commands, cannot follow the commands but can track the visual stimuli, cannot track the visual stimuli but saccades to the voice, does not saccade to the voice but saccades to the physical stimuli, no response to the examiner. So we have to assess the arousal attentiveness of the patient, along with that orientation of the person, orientation to person, place, time, oriented to any of the above, or oriented to self. Then coming to localizing the abnormalities in the neurological examination. So cranial nerve examination, especially the pupillary symmetry and reactivity to the light. Mostly the pupillary symmetry and reactivity to the light is spared. Visual assessment to blink to the thread. Second and seventh cranial nerves and visual pathways. Then extraocular movements. If the patient cannot track, test the oculocephalic reflex or dorsal maneuver, and vestibulo-ocular reflex and hearing. Cranial nerve 5 and 7, corneal response, facial sensation and facial movement. Also check for the gag and tongue movements. Coming to the motor examination, with the strength, test all four limbs. There should no drift holding the arm or leg out for 10 seconds. Drift when the limb moves before 10 seconds but does not hit the bed or support. Whether he is able to move the limb against the gravity, unable to move the limb against the gravity, but some movement if force or gravity is elevated. And the response to the physical stimuli. If the patient cannot comply to the above motor examination, test the response to the physical stimuli. That is, if he localizes to the physical stimuli or withdraws from the physical stimuli, or is there any posturing defects, flexure posturing, decorticate, or extensor posturing, decerebrate. Plegia, there is no movement to physical stimuli, or triple flexion. That is, there is a stereotyped flexion at the hip, knee, and the ankle. So, approach to the patient. Initially, we have to first history and clinical examination plays an important role in the approach to the patient, which gives us an idea how to which investigations to order and how to go about the patients. The first and foremost step is to rule out the structural causes of brain injury. Laboratory tests include the complete blood count, RFT, LFT, calcium, magnesium, and phosphate to look for any derangements in the kidney function, also any electrolyte imbalance, any hepatic encephalopathy, ammonia, serum osmolality, and ABG. If if infection is suspected, that the total count is elevated, CSF cultures can be obtained. Also, if any endocrine abnormality is suspected, thyroid function test can be done. Any nutritional deficiency, vitamin B12 levels can be assessed. Coming to the neuroimaging plays an important role in the metabolic encephalopathy. Different types of encephalopathy have different CT and MRI imaging features. So, CT or MRI of the head is indicated when focal signs are present on physical examination. Electroencephalography confirm the global and cerebral dysfunction to exclude the subclinical. It confirms the cerebral dysfunction and excludes the subclinical seizures. And the degree of diffuse slowing in the normal background and abnormal mixed rhythm correlates with the severity. Also in the EEG, triphasic waves are paroxysmal discharges that are common but non-specific. In most extreme cases, burst suppression pattern can be seen. So, differential diagnosis for metabolic encephalopathy, it can be either structural brain lesion or anoxic brain injury, infection, seizures, degenerative disorders, or trauma. Structural brain lesions such as ischemic stroke, intracerebral hemorrhage, traumatic brain injury, subdural hematoma, subarachnoid hemorrhage, brain tumor, cerebral sinus thrombosis, they have a characteristic features that is focal deficits are often present and fixed, and there is cranial nerve involvement. When coming to anoxic brain injury, it is post cardiac arrest, near drowning, or airway obstruction. It is in the clinical context with the cranial nerve involvement. Infections such as meningitis, encephalitis, and abscess. The characteristic features can be neck rigidity, meningismus, photophobia, focal examination findings, and CSF findings, fever, elevated white blood cell count. Coming to seizures, they can be focal seizures, complex partial seizures, general seizures, non-convulsive seizures. These are characteristic features can be rhythmic myoclonus but not often multifocal. So, metabolic encephalopathy can present as seizures, but seizures is also a differential diagnosis. Degenerative diseases, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, fatal familial insomnia. The characteristic features of these include the subacute progression, myoclonus, and specific EEG and MRI findings, and CSF 14-3-3 protein, and also genetic testing shows positive. Psychiatric symptoms, insomnia, and sleep disturbances can be seen. Trauma, shaken, for example, shaken baby syndrome or diffuse external injury, where we can see a retinal hemorrhages, imaging, and social and clinical history is also helpful. Management, treatment of the underlying etiology, and the general measures. The mainstay of the treatment is treatment of the underlying etiology, but prior to that, a general specific measures such as discontinue the drugs with potential toxicity, risperidone to continue to control the agitated behavior. It can be given twice daily, or supplementation of thiamine if there is any alcoholic history, if the patient is malnourished, history of cancer, hyperemesis gravidarum, or patient is on renal failure, patient is on hemodialysis. Coming to the other specific causes of the encephalopathy. The first is organic failure, that is hepatic encephalopathy, renal failure, or failure of the lungs. Hepatic encephalopathy, it can be of two types, acute or chronic. Acute, you can see in acute fulminant hepatic failure with marked cerebral edema. Chronic is based on chronic liver disease, high protein intake. Chronic is seen in chronic liver disease. It helps in high the precipitating factors like high protein intake, gastrointestinal bleeding, infections, and hypovolemia. Coming to the pathophysiology, it might be multifactorial because of the increased ammonia concentration and development of the false neurotransmitters, endogenous benzodiazepine like substances, abnormal fatty acid metabolism, free radical damage, cerebral edema, and increased mercaptans. The clinical findings vary with the severity. In chronic hepatic encephalopathy, there is a fluctuations with periods of remissions, whereas in acute hepatic encephalopathy, there are four stages. Stage 1 and 2 with agitated confusional state. Stage 3 is a stage of stupor with preserved arousal, and stage 4 is coma. So the diagnosis is based on clinical grounds, and also the abnormal LFT. Elevated arterial ammonia is present in some cases. However, normal arterial ammonia does not rule out the cause of hepatic encephalopathy. And treatment. The treatment is correction of the coagulation parameters, correction of the electrolyte abnormalities, correction of the volume depletion, and hypoxemia. The mainstay is management of cerebral edema, management of hyperammonemia, and uh, the other correction of coagulation parameters and underlying and reduction of the precipitating factors. Coming to the uremic encephalopathy, the pathology of uremic encephalopathy can be because of decreased clearance of osmotically active toxins, which causes and also pro-inflammatory state that leads to blood-brain barrier breakage and electrolyte abnormalities. Seizures and myoclonus are seen with acute renal failure with electrolyte abnormalities, and disequilibrium syndrome is seen with cerebral edema, which during or following shortly after an intermittent hemodialysis. This is because of sudden clearing of nitrogenous compound from the blood and increase in the urea content, leading to the raised ICP. The clinical features are confusion, headache, vomiting, tremors, myoclonic seizures. It usually resolves spontaneously within days. There is also another entity called dialysis dementia, which is long term, and that is 2.5 years later on the dialysis patients with aluminum intoxication. The patients can present with permanent memory loss, dysarthria, myoclonus, mood or personality changes, and it usually leads to death within 6 months from the diagnosis. Hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. It follows an obvious precipitative event like a cardiac arrest or with prolonged resuscitation efforts. Sometimes hypotension and hypoxemia can also mimic the encephalopathy. The duration and severity of hypoxia or hypotension and the patient's pre existing neurological status determine the magnitude of the neurological insult. The clinical findings can be subtle with memory difficulties, or it may be severe like coma. Antegrade and retrograde amnesia and global confusion, as seen in Korsakoff syndrome, can be seen once the patient recovers from the coma. And cortical blindness, myoclonus, seizures, cerebral ataxia, akinetic rigid syndromes, bilateral arm weakness due to watershed territory infarcts can be observed in case of hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. The pupillary light reflex, flexas and extensor responses, the conjugating or orienting eye movements on initial examination can be is used to identify the patients with a better prognosis. The other entity is septic encephalopathy. It is the most common cause of toxic metabolic encephalopathy, especially seen in ICU settings. The presence and severity presence of septic encephalopathy and severity correlate with the increased mortality. The pathophysiology is multifactorial because of microcirculatory abnormalities, altered blood-brain barrier, inflammatory cytokines, reductions in the monoamine neurotransmitters, increasing in the false neurotransmitters, ischemia secondary to in situ thrombosis, which occurs in other organs in case of sepsis. So it may also affect the brain and is visible on MRA. A lumbar puncture performed to exclude meningitis may be entirely normal or show an elevated protein concentration. EEG is diffusely slow with triphasic waves and burst suppression pattern in severe cases. So diffuse muscle weakness due to coexisting critical care polyneuropathy is found in up to 70% of the patients. So the treatment is basically the treating the sepsis. It causes the resolution of the septic encephalopathy. Coming to the electrolyte imbalance, the first and the most important thing is hyponatremia. Sodium is the most important thing. Hyponatremia can cause encephalopathy. It is because of syndrome of inappropriate ADS secretion or as a decrease in effective circulating blood volume. The clinical features depends upon the severity and the rate of development of hyponatremia. If it develops within less than 12 to 24 hours or sodium is less than 120 milliequivalents, the clinical features will be severe. There'll be confusion, disorientation, agitation, delirium, and then it progresses to loss of consciousness. Sometimes patients may also develop seizures. The treatment depends upon the clinical symptoms and the presumptive cause, whether it is hypervolemic, hypovolemic, or euvolemic hyponatremia. And sodium correction should go according to the symptoms and the in a normal way. Overcorrection or rapid correction leads to osmotic demyelination or pontine myelinosis, osmotic demyelination of pontine myelinosis, which can present as quadriparesis, quadriplegia, pseudobulbar palsy, or gaze palsies. Then another entity is hypernatremia. Hypernatremia is increased is maybe secondary to increased insensible water losses and decreased thirst. It can be seen in diabetes insipidus. Hyperosmolality develops slowly and persists for hours to days. The patient will be alert until their serum osmolarity exceeds 350 milliosmoles per kg. Once it exceeds, the patient becomes drowsy, confused, and occasionally seizures may occur. The treatment is determined by treating the underlying cause of hypernatremia, the volume status, and neurological condition. Hypernatremia, the main treatment is water. So the rate of correction should be at 1 to 2 milliequivalents per liter per hour. Coming to the other electrolyte imbalances, they can be hypercalcemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, hypophosphatemia. Hypercalcemia, they can present with drowsiness, they can progress to coma, it is often reversible. Treatment is mainstays hydration, glucocorticoids, bisphosphonates, calcitonin. It depends upon the cause of the hypercalcemia. And coming to hypocalcemia and hypomagnesemia, they frequently coexist. The clinical features will be muscle weakness, behavioral changes, hallucinations, seizures, coma. Clinical signs like Chopstick sign, Strauss sign may be present. The treatment is IV and oral supplementation of calcium and magnesium. Hypophosphatemia. It presents as muscle weakness, particular preference to the diaphragm. There can be confusion, ataxia, nystagmus, abducens palsy may occur. Patients on parenteral nutrition are most prone for these effect disorders like refeeding syndrome. Then coming to the glucose. Glucose was very important and it causes metabolic encephalopathy. Either its increase or decrease will cause metabolic encephalopathy. Hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia can present as tremors, diaphoresis, generalized seizures, or bizarre behavior. Severe hypoglycemia can even present as coma and focal deficits. In acute severe hypoglycemia, a bolus of 25 to 50 grams of dextrose should be administered intravenously, followed by continuous dextrose infusion. The offending agents or the causes of hypoglycemia should be treated. Coming to the hyperglycemia, it can be hyperosmolar hyperglycemia or diabetic ketoacidosis, where we can see a progressive neurological impairment, ultimately coma. There is one separate entity called hemichorea hemibalism. The patient presents with this hemiballistic and choreotic movements, which is mainly seen in hyperosmolar hypoglycemia rather than diabetic ketoacidosis. In the MRI, we can find high signal intensity in the contralateral striatum. Striatum is involved. The treatment is IV fluids, insulin, potassium replacement, correction of the diabetic ketoacidosis. Coming to the endocrine abnormalities, it can be hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, or adrenal crisis. Hypothyroidism, myxedema, coma. Patient can present with apathy, neglect, decreased cognition to confusion, or may present with psychosis or coma. Precipitating factors include stressors such as infections, burns, hypothermia, and medications. Notable signs include extreme hypothermia, bradycardia, central hypoventilation, and hypoxia. It is commonly associated with hyponatremia with the history of fatigue, weight gain, constipation, and cold intolerance. Treatment is thyroid supplementation. Hyperthyroidism or thyroid storm. It is seen in agitation. The patient's presents with agitation, irritability, apathy, psychosis, and rarely coma. Seizures, either generalized or localized, related and chorea can also occur. The EEG shows triphasic delta waves, and other features like tremors, tachycardia, cardiac dysarrhythmias, and hypertension are often clues to the thyroid dysfunction. Thyroid storm is a medical emergency. If unchecked, can result into death. Coming to the other important thing is adrenal insufficiency or adrenal crisis. So this is because of the damage to the adrenal cortex and consequent decrease in the production of glucocorticoids and mineral corticoids. Adrenal crisis occurs in the setting of Addison's disease during episodes of stress, which is a medical emergency. So triggers include dehydration, trauma, surgery, infection, or other physical stress, or stopping a glucocorticoid treatment. The clinical presentation may begin with confusion or mild psychiatric symptoms like behavioral and mood changes, and may progress to in severe instances may be progress to cognitive impairment, psychosis, loss of consciousness, and coma. EEG may show a background slowing. The systemic signs include hypotension, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and fever. So the treatment is supplementation of the glucose and mineralocorticoids. Then the other important thing is vernix encephalopathy. Alcohol is the commonest cause of vernix encephalopathy because of the dietary decreases the dietary intake of thiamine, decreases the GI absorption, decreases the hepatic storage, and impaired use. So the clinical triad is seen in only one-fourth of the patients, that is encephalopathy, oculomotor dysfunction, and gait ataxia. Encephalopathy, disorientation, indifference, and inattentiveness. Oculomotor dysfunction like nystagmus, lateral rectus palsy, conjugate Gauss palsy, and unequal pupils, non-reactive pupils. Gait ataxia, primarily in the stance and gait. Others like peripheral neuropathy, hypothermia, cardiac and vestibular symptoms can be seen. So mainly the pathophysiology is vitamin B1 deficiency and the treatment is thiamine, IV supplementation of thiamine. So Korsakoff syndrome is a chronic disease which progressed from untreated vernix encephalopathy. It causes severe retrograde and antegrade amnesia with relatively preserved long-term memory and cognitive skills. Confabulation is sometimes present in Korsakoff syndrome, but the patient is unaware of their illness. Coming to the drugs. Drugs constitute a major part in case of metabolic encephalopathy. A few drugs like sedatives, anticholinergic agents, salicylates are worthy of mention. And also there is a antibiotics can also cause encephalopathy. Sedatives like benzodiazepines, barbiturates, alcohols can cause ataxia, nystagmus, dysarthria. Opiate overdose usually begins with somnolence. Not only the overdose, their withdrawal also causes encephalopathy like features. Anticholinergic agents like tricyclic antidepressants, antipsychotic medications, and antihistamines are involved. So they cause hyperpyrexia, cardiac arrhythmias, coma, and neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Salicylates, especially in patients with liver enzyme defects, they may progress in children. In pediatric group, they may progress to fulminant hepatic encephalopathy, Rice, which is called as Rice syndrome. Antibiotic associated encephalopathy. Three types are recognized. They are type 1, where delirium and seizures can be seen associated with cephalosporins and penicillin. Type 2, the patients present with psychosis without seizures, which has been associated with quinolones and macrolides. And type 3, where we see encephalopathy and cerebellar signs, which has been attributed to metronidazole. So common poisoning syndromes or toxidromes, they can be sympathomimetic, anticholinergic, cholinergic, hallucinogenic, opioid. So sympathomimetic toxidrome, where the patient will be hyper alert, agitated with hallucinations with paranoia. The pupils, they show mydriasis, and in the vital signs there will be hyperthermia, tachycardia, hypertension, widened pulse pressure, tachypnea, and hyperapnea. So everything is an increased. Other manifestations like diaphoresis, tremors, hyperreflexia, and seizures can be seen. So these are seen in case of cocaine, amphetamines, ephedrine, pseudoephedrine, phenylpropanolamine, theophylline, and caffeine. Then anticholinergic toxicrome, where the patient will be in hypervigilant state, agitated with hallucinations, with delirium. Pupils will be dilated, and there will be hyperthermia, tachycardia, hypertension, and tachypnea. The skin will be dry, flushed skin with dry mucous membrane, decreased bowel sounds with urinary retention, chorioathiosis, and picking behavior. So examples will be tricyclic antidepressants, orphanadrine, anti-Parkinson agents, antispasmodics, phenothiazines, atropines, copalamin, etc. Then coming to hallucinogenic toxicrome. The patients will present with hallucinations, perceptual distortions, depersonalization, and agitation. Pupils mydriasis. There will be mydriasis. So the vital signs, there will be hyperthermia, tachycardia, hypertension, tachypnea. The other manifestation will be nystagmus. So the agents causing this hallucinogenic toxidrome is phencyclidine, LSD, misacalin, psilocybin, and MDMA. So coming to the opioid toxidrome, it can cause CNS depression and coma. The pupils will show meiosis, and the vital signs will be everything decreased, bradypnea, apnea, characteristic, and may develop hypothermia, bradycardia, and hypotension. So other features will be hyporeflexia, pulmonary edema, and needle marks. The drugs involved are opioids, like example heroin, morphine, methadone, oxycodone, and diphenoxylate. Then sedative and hypnotic toxidrome, where there will be CNS depression, confusion, stupor, and coma. The pupils can be variable. They can be normal, they can be myotic, they can be mydriatic. So the patients may have hypothermia, bradycardia, hypotension, and there will be hyporeflexia. The examples will be benzodiazepines, barbiturates, carisoprodol, zolpidem, glutamide, and alcohols. Cholinergic toxidrome, where there is confusion, coma, the pupils will be myotic, and the patient will have bradycardia, hypertension or hypotension, tachypnea or bradypnea. But the most important cholinergic feature is increased salivation, urinary and fecal incontinence, diarrhea, emesis, diaphoresis, lacrimation, GI cramps, bronchoconstriction, muscle fasciculations can be seen. Also, weakness and seizures can be observed. It is seen in case of organophosphate and carbamate insecticide poisonings, nerve agents, nicotine, pilocarpine, physostigmine, edrophonium, betaconol, etc., betanacol, etc. Serotonin syndrome. It is one of the most important things. The patients on psychiatric medications, the patient may present with the confusion, agitation, or coma. Pupils will be dilated. There will be hyperthermia, tachycardia, hypertension, tachypnea. They will be presenting with tremors, myoclonus, hyperreflexia, flushing, trismus, rigidity, and diarrhea. MAO inhibitors alone or with SSRIs, mepedrin, tricyclic antidepressants, L-tryptophan can cause serotonin syndrome. So we have a sympathomimetic toxidrome, anticholinergic toxidrome, cholinergic toxidrome, hallucinogenic toxidrome, opioid and sedative hypnotic type of toxidromes, and also serotonin syndromes, where there will be mydriasis and confusion, agitation, and coma. Coming to the mitochondrial disorders, there are some mitochondrial disorders, though these are inborn errors of metabolism. We can see a few mitochondrial disorders in the adult phase also. So the selected mitochondrial disorders like pyruvate carboxylase deficiency, phosphoenolate pyruvate carboxylase deficiency, Pearson syndrome, mitochondrial DNA depletion syndromes, a lot of syndromes are there. Worthy of mention are myoclonic epilepsy with ragged red fibers, MERF, where the patient presents with myoclonic epilepsy, cerebral ataxia, dementia, sensory neural deficiency, and peripheral neuropathy and optic atrophy. Also, mitochondrial myopathy, encephalopathy, lactic acidosis, and stroke-like episodes, MELAS, where the name suggests everything, and Kyrian-Cian syndrome, where it is early in the age of onset with heart block and pigmentary retinopathy. Other inborn errors of metabolism worthy of mention are Wilson's disease. It is like autosomal recessive disorder with accumulation of the copper in the brain, kidney, and liver. The clinical features, the neurological or neuropsychiatric manifestation of Wilson's include an akinetic rigid syndrome like Parkinson's, tremors, ataxia, dystonia, chorioauriform movements, and pseudobulbar palsy. So the changes in the behavior, a deterioration in the schoolwork, and worsening of the hand-eye coordination are the early features before the neurological features develop. The diagnosis may be based on KF ring, decreased serum copper and ceruloplasmin levels, increased 24-hour urinary copper excretion. The MRI shows a panda sign wherein T2 weighted images we find hyperintensity in the brain superimposed on the low signal in the substantia nigra and red nucleus. Treatment is copper chelating agents like dipencilamine and zinc. Then reversible posterior leukoencephalopathy syndrome. It is mainly diagnosed based on the clinical and radiological features. The clinical features include headache, confusion, visual symptoms, and seizures. The MRI may show vasogenic edema in the subcortical white matter and predominantly localized to posterior cerebral hemispheres. And the precipitating causes are hypertensive crisis, preeclampsia, or with cytotoxic immunosuppressive therapy. Treatment of hypertension is a mainstay of treatment in the patients presenting with reversible posterior leukoencephalopathy syndrome. So, coming to the take home message in case of metabolic encephalopathy, where various metabolic disorders and toxins cause the accumulation of the toxins in the brain and cause encephalopathy. So, while once the patient comes, it should be no organic or structural causes should be ruled out. Also, the other causes should be taken care of.